This is Safety Bri, your number one safety geek. Why do we have the behaviors that we do? Superheroes in the workplace, right? All of those things that go into making you an effective safety manager. I love what we do. Motivation, learning, teaching, training, teamwork. I geek out over that just as much as I do safety. Hello, and happy New Year, my safety friends. Welcome to 2020. I know. Last week, I did do a New Year's resolution podcast, and you probably listened to it already into the new year because I think it came out on the 31st, but so be it. I have to say Happy New Year because this is my first podcast of 2020. So welcome to the Safety Geek podcast. I am so happy that you've joined me here today. My name is Bri. I am your number one safety geek. I absolutely love talking safety. I love talking about management commitment and support. I love talking about the psychology of safety. All of this stuff is just amazing to me. So I'm glad that you found us. If you're a new listener, let's say that you got some cool tech or you kind of have a New Year's resolution to listen to some safety podcasts. If you're new, welcome. I am here every week. We also have an amazing Facebook group. And what else we got going on? We got the blog. We got lots of good stuff. So make sure that you join the Safety Geek squad. We are amazing people. So today I am super excited. I kind of felt like it's a new year. It's January. What do we want to talk about? Let's talk about contractor safety programs, right? It's, to me, every January, I love to focus on my contractors because it's just such a great time to start the year off right. You know, you can start collecting their information. It actually helps them as well, especially if you're working with contractors that don't really follow the rules like they should. You're kind of getting them to complete their OSHA logs and turn them into you and all of that good stuff. So it's just such a great time to really focus on like, okay, what contractors are we going to use this year and what do we need and which ones have we been using, and let's refresh them. And I know I'm going into the weeds here, but don't worry, I'm going to break it down for you just like I always do into nice, simple steps. So let's get started with, first off, what is a contractor safety program? So what it is that, you know, every business out there, every corporation out there, every organization, they can't do everything themselves. So they're going to be hiring in people to come on property and do work for them. Or maybe the work is being done off property. Whatever, the work is being done for that organization. And we're generally paying these contractors to do the work. Unlike an hourly employee where we're paying the employee, right? So what we want to make sure is that these people that we are paying, that they're safe, that they're not going to create liability issues for our organization and get us into trouble. That's what it is creating a program where you're kind of protecting your company's liability for any injuries or accidents that contractors may have. Now, the reason why this is important is that these contractors, they may injure their own employees on your property, and you could be liable for that. They may be selling you a product that you're then going to resell and injure the public, so you could be liable for that. And I've got a great story on that one. It could be a customer, you know, making a delivery, or not a customer, but a vendor making a delivery on your property, and they're not acting safely, and they either injure themselves or they injure one of your employees. You want to do your due diligence. You want to make sure that you have done everything in your power that the people that work for you, these contractors, or people coming on your property to do work, that you have made every effort possible that they are going to do the work safely, that they're not going to cause damage, they're not going to cause accidents, they're not going to cause injuries. And damage could be to your building, your property. Accidents and injuries could be to themselves, to your employees, or to the public. When you are creating a contractor safety program from scratch, it could be a daunting task. So the way that I always like to do it is baby steps, because you never know who you're currently working with until you actually start this process. And it can be overwhelming, and you don't want to just dump all of your contractors at once. So what happens if you start this process and you find out you set these standards without even doing it in baby steps? You go, these are our standards from now on. This is what we're doing. And you just pull off that Band-Aid and go, we only want to work with contractors that have like mega insurance, that have exceptional safety programs, and have accident rates 50% below the average or whatever, right? You may be knocking out 80% of your contractors. So we want to do this in a methodical way. And you might already do some of this already, or you might already do all of it. I hope you already do all of it. That would be amazing. What I did is I broke this down into phases. So if you have nothing, like you have a plumber coming on site and you're just like, Joe the plumber, please come on site. Thank you. And we'll write you a check. And that's all you do. We're going to start you off from scratch. If you do more than that, you'll see where you are along the way. All right. So phase one. Phase one is getting what is called a certificate of insurance from anybody who is doing work on your behalf. So this could be somebody doing work on your property or doing work for you off of your property. And a certificate of insurance just proves that they have insurance. You want to develop some minimum levels of insurance. If you've never done this before, I would just say, give me your certificate of insurance. That would be your very first phase, right? And then after you've collected all of these, we call them COIs. After you've collected all of these COIs, if you notice a pattern of like, well, half of them have really good insurance and half of them don't, then you might want to start saying, okay, now I want to develop minimum standards for the level of insurance that you have. Generally in the United States, most employers, if they have 4 or more employees, are going to have at least $500,000 in workers' comp. Maybe you want to increase that to $1 million. In general liability, most people will have $1 million. Some people, they're really low level. They might only have $100K, right? But you really want to shoot for $1 million and maybe bump that up to $4 million aggregate. Auto insurance, are they going to be driving a vehicle on your property or driving a vehicle on your behalf? So you might want to have anywhere from $300,000 to, a couple million for that as well. And then there are also these things called umbrella policies. So what an umbrella policy is that if their workers' comp is $500,000, but the injury is actually $2 million, then the umbrella policy comes in to the umbrella limit. So that means. So when you're determining what insurance limits you want to have, generally your legal department would probably be involved, your finance department, and whoever handles your insurance, they'd probably give you recommendations as well. But you want to consider the types of claims that may happen and the cost of those claims. So like the average automobile accident is less than $100,000. I think it's even less than $50,000, right? So requiring $4 million in auto might not really be worth trying to get people to have. You kind of want to look at like what kind of damage can they do and what levels of insurance should they have. And you might even want to break it up. And you might say, hey, if you're just coming on property to deliver snacks and coffee and water, you're going to have a really low level requirement. But if you're coming on property to work on the electrical system or the plumbing or the air conditioning, or you're going to be welding or doing chemical work, you got to have some major levels of coverage. And then there's also like environmental coverage that you could require. There's trailer interchange if they're towing your trailer. There's all different kinds of levels in there too. Right. And you want to make sure that when you get this COI from them, that you are named as a certificate holder so that they can't just give you a copy of their declarations page and say, I'm good. No, you want to be a certificate holder. And what this does is it allows you to get updates directly from the insurance broker when changes are made. Because what can happen is they give you the copy of their declaration page and then they cancel their insurance right afterwards. That does happen. People do that. So what'll happen if you're named as a certificate holder, every time there's a change, you get a notification from the broker or from the agency or whatever it is. So you have to be named as a certificate holder. Another thing that you might want to upgrade to is being named as an additional insured. This is usually like a checkbox that'll say on the COI that, hey, I'm an additional insured. And what this does is it allows you to tender claims directly to their insurance company. So the normal process with claims is, let's say that somebody trips and falls, or let's use my example. So we had a person get E. coli from a product that they think it was from our product. It could have been from anything, but it could have been from a product that we sold them. So they filed a claim for the fact that they had this hospitalization and that they had this E. coli. I was allowed to not even get my insurance company involved because I got the product from somebody else and I was named as an additional insured. So that claim just went directly to their insurance company. So that way I'm not involved at all. And my insurance does not get the hit of having a claim either. We always put them on notification, but we didn't get the expense of having a claim and all of that good stuff. So that's why you want to be named as an additional insured. It lets you keep your insurance company out of the loop and just says, hey, that's not us. We're just the middleman. Let me pass it on. Somebody gets injured on your property, like one of the contractor's employees, they're doing work for the contractor and they get injured on your property, you're not involved because you're just an additional insured. It's all going to their insurance company. All right, so that's phase one. That's the certificate of insurance. Now you might want to extend that. So the next step that I would include is verifying the quality of their coverage. That is having minimum standards that you would expect. So there's a company out there called AM Best that actually rates insurance companies. So when you get that certificate of insurance, at the very top, it tells you what insurance company is insuring that contractor. You can then look up that insurance company on AM Best and see if they're rated like an A or an A plus or an A minus or a B, and you can set standards and say, hey, I only want to work with contractors who are insured by companies that are B or better or A or better. What that means is that the integrity of that insurance company, that they're going to pay the claim, like their integrity has shown that they will pay the claim. So think about here in Florida, we get a lot of hurricanes. And what happens when a really bad hurricane comes through and lots of homes are destroyed, if they are in a lowly ranked insurance company that insured those homes, then that insurance company can go bankrupt, right? And they don't have the financial backing to pay the claims. So that's what we're talking about with ratings. Is because, so even like think about your own homeowner's insurance, always look up the rating of those too. And so that way are they financially sound to pay the claim? So that's basically what you're checking there. And this takes minutes. It's really not that hard to add in there, but it's incredible what you'll find. You'll be working with a contractor that you think is really good. The reason why they might have a low ranked insurance is twofold. It could be that their injury rates are so poor that the high-ranking companies won't insure them, or it could be that they're just trying to cut costs and not pay a lot for insurance. So that is phase two. Phase one is getting the certificate of insurance. Phase two is verifying the quality of the coverage. Now, if you want to get even more protective of your company, you can add in requiring a contract, or that includes a hold harmless agreement or a hold harmless clause. So this is a legal documentation that says, hey, I'm holding the company harmless from anything that my contractor does, my contracting company does. And what this does is it actually protects the company even more. The additional insured is going to do that anyway, but this is just an added layer of protection. And you're basically setting clear standards from the beginning that, hey, if something was to happen, we're not taking any blame for what you're doing, and your legal department or a lawyer can write one up for you. And I will tell you, we used to have, so one company I worked for, we just had one blanket hold harmless agreement. And it's usually just a one-page form. And it was very simple. And it went for everybody, regardless of what kind of work they did. And at another company I worked for, we had 3 different ones. So we broke the contractors up into 3 different levels of risk and then had 3 different hold harmless agreements based on what the work that they did. So that's like a legal thing. And I will tell you, the more that you work for a corporation, the more legal gets involved than when you're working for, a sole proprietorship or a partnership or something like that. All right, so that's phase 3, adding in a hold harmless agreement. Now, that's the basics. Most companies are going to do those 3 things. They're going to get a certificate of insurance, they're going to verify coverage, and they're going to have some sort of contract or hold harmless agreement. Now, when you really get into the meat of a contractor safety program, this is really looking at their safety of that contractor. So where I like to start off with this is that I like to collect their OSHA logs. And I like to see 5 years of OSHA logs if possible. 3 is generally a must. Keep in mind, I think the latest laws is that they only have to maintain 6 months. So if they try to tell you they only have 6 months worth of logs, you're kind of stuck because that law got repealed with the new administration. So anyway, so I like to collect their OSHA logs, and on their OSHA log, and I'll accept the 300A. I actually want to see the 300A as well as their log themselves. So that way I'm seeing the number of hours they worked, how many injuries and illnesses they had, so I can calculate their TCIR, total claims incident rate, right? Total case incident rate. It's so hard when you know all the acronyms and you have to think about what they stand for. So anyway, so I can actually calculate their TCIR, and I can see who signed the 300A, and I can go, okay, do they know that it should be the highest person in the company signing the 300A? So that's something that I would look at too. And on the 300A, it's going to have either their NACSIS code or their SIC code. So that way you can look up what the industry standard is for their NACSIS code. Please don't. I think it's North American International Classification System or something. It's NACSIS code, okay? NACIS. So I look that up and I see where they stand according to industry standards. And I like to see them close to the industry standard. Recently, last week or so, I saw an article about Amazon's OSHA rates, and that Amazon as a whole has TCIR of double the industry standard. Now, because I've worked in distribution, I know the industry standard is about a 5.5. So you're talking, it's probably around an 11 or a 12. And then they even said that some individual facilities had like a 25 or something like that in this article. I did not do, normally when I read and I quote an article, I do the background research, but I did not do that. That is like, if they were a contractor, I wouldn't be working with them. I would be like, no, I don't want your services because they're doing something. There's something in their culture that is showing that it's okay to be injured, because that's just not acceptable to be that far above industry standards. So that is what I would be looking for with my contractors. I would say, hey, where are you at compared to industry standards? If their industry standard is a 5.5 and they're at a 6, I'm probably okay with that. But if they're at a 7, we're going to have a conversation. We're going to be like, why are you so far above the industry standard? And what are you doing to get yourself below the industry standard? This is why I look for more than 1 year of OSHA records, because everybody can have a bad year. And that might be what happened in that Amazon article, right? They might have only looked at 1 year. Everybody can have a bad year. So that's why you want to look at how were they over the past 3 years? How were they over the past 5 years? So you can see if it was just like an anomaly, because that does happen, or is this a trend? Is there a systemic problem in this contractor where they are injuring people all the time? So you might want to start having a minimum standard and then sticking to that minimum standard, right? So that would be phase 4, collecting the OSHA logs. Or the safety record. I know if you're outside the United States, you guys don't do OSHA logs, but you could have like, how many injuries did you have and how many hours did you work? And you can create, what their standard is. And if you don't know where to get the standard, you go to bls.org. Now, the next phase 5, is collecting and reviewing their safety program. So what I like to do is to say, hey, send me a copy of your safety program. Now, my safety program is 28 binders big. I'm not going to send them that whole thing, but I have a summary of my program. That's what I would send. So if they have an organized safety program, they should have a summary of like, hey, this is what's involved in our safety program. I've also had contractors literally send me a thumb drive of their entire program. And basically what I'm looking for here is that they have things in place. If I say, send me your safety program, and they're like, what are you talking about? Then that's a red flag to me. All right. And we'll talk about whether or not you still work with these contractors, but you need to know where they stand in their safety program. What kind of training do you put your employees through? What is the new hire training? What is the pre-project training? All of that kind of stuff. So that is phase 5. And I will tell you, this is where it gets difficult. Most people are fine giving you the certificate of insurance, giving you the hold harmless agreement, even sending you their OSHA logs. But the minute you start asking for their safety program, they start getting really antsy. It's hard to collect it. This is where I might put a line in the sand and say, only my extremely hazardous contractors do I do this for. My electricians, my plumbers, my racking people, anybody who's going to be working at a height, my roofers, my AC people, my chemicals, my welders. I think I might have said that, but I might not require this for the person delivering the coffee to the vending machines or something like that, or delivering water or dropping off parts to the maintenance department, right? So for them, I might stop at, the hold harmless agreement. So that is phase 5. And phase 6, I actually kind of put in 2 to 3 different things, because it doesn't matter what order you do these in. I would not do them. To do them all at once is just overwhelming, but having all of these in place is extremely helpful. So the first one is a pre-project meeting, right? So this is meeting with the contractor before the project. So let's say you're having a new roof put on. You meet with the contractor before the project and you talk about the safety policies and procedures. You train the people who are going to be working on your site. Maybe do a tour of the operations and show them where the safety gear is. You might review the lockout tagout procedures for the equipment on your policy. You might collect the SDSs for any chemicals that they're going to be bringing on your property. So it's just kind of a pre-project meeting. And then the other thing is doing a project review during the project. So during the work while they're there on property, you're going to observe their work and document it. So like I've brought contractors in who change the light bulbs, right? So yeah, we walk through while they're changing the light bulbs and do a quick observation. Yep, they've got their fall protection on. They've got cones out, notifying pedestrians. They've got eye protection on. They're following all the procedures. Just a quick little yep, they're doing good. And if anything is a no, you bring them down and you correct them. And then the other thing to add is an after project review. And this is where you might want to get together with the facilities manager or whoever was in charge of the project and say, okay, how did you think it went? What could have gone better? And do we want to continue to use this contractor? So you'll be looking at the pre-meeting objectives, and then you'll be looking at the during project review. And then afterwards you say, hey, are we still going to use them? And then you might also be thinking like, well, a lot of my contractors, they come every month. Maybe you have pest control that comes every month, or maybe the light bulb guy comes every single month. That's perfectly fine. Then once a year you go, do we still want to use that contractor? Are they following the procedures? So every time a contractor comes on property, we would always do an after project review. We wouldn't necessarily always do a during project review unless it was a specific project. But if it was a contractor coming every month, yeah, occasionally we would do a during project review and do that observation watching them work. And then the last is annual training. So if you have a contractor that is coming on a regular basis, you want to make sure that you have trained them on your safety policies and procedures on an annual basis. And the best place I saw this done was at this manufacturing facility where they had a security guard at the entry, and he had a list of all the contracting companies and then all the employees for each one and the date that they last went through that facility's training. And he would just compare and go, yep, you've been trained, you're allowed in property. And if they were not on the list, then they were sent directly to the safety manager to go through the annual training. So every year they went through, just the HAZCOM, the lockout, tagout, first aid, how to report accidents, and anything related to the work that they are doing on property. Okay. That's pretty much a complete contractor safety program from start to finish. If you were to implement one, and you had a full program, you would be collecting certificates of insurance, verifying the quality of their coverage, requiring a contractor or hold harmless agreement, looking at their OSHA logs for several years and comparing it to industry standards, examining their safety program to make sure that it meets your requirements. You would be doing a pre-project meeting and training. You would do a during project observation and an after project review, and an annual training if the contractor is going to keep coming back. That would be a full program. That's a lot to handle. That's why there are actually companies out there that will help you manage your contractor safety programs. There's some great companies out there. I'm not going to pick one over the other, but just know that there are people that will collect all this information for you and review it for you. So the only thing you have to focus on is the pre-project meeting and the during and after project review. They'll even take care of the annual training and everything for you. They're pretty awesome. Okay. So the biggest takeaways that I want you to take away from this is that when you are building your contractor safety program, look at who your contractors are and the risk that they are posing your company, and decide whether or not you want to split them up or you want them all to be held to the same standard. And then know that it's hard to go full force. It's hard to say go from nothing to full force 100% contractor safety program. If you try to do that, you will lose some people. And then what happens is you're putting a lot of work on yourself, because as you lose people because they're not meeting your standards, you then have to go out and find people that will meet your standards. Which brings up another thing is, what are you going to do when somebody doesn't meet your standards? What if you have these high standards and you can't find a contractor that meets them? You should have a plan in place on how you're going to handle that. And I will tell you the way that we handled it, because, work has to be done. A lot of times, if your business or organization is in a remote location, there might only be one or two plumbers that have the insurance that you need, and they don't have a safety program. So what are you going to do about it? So what we used to do is we would intensify the training beforehand. And then depending upon their safety record, we might actually have somebody that stays with them 100% of the time while they're on property. So they were never left alone. They were always escorted and they were always watched. So it was like a safety watch type of thing. Just because you have these standards does not mean that they're set in stone. There has to be some compromise because work has to be done. So you just need to know, okay, if someone doesn't meet the standards, what are we going to do? And that's a decision for the management team. That's not something that you don't have to decide by yourself. So as you're developing this program, you develop it with your management team, but just every step of the way, ask, what if we can't find a contractor that meets those standards? I remember trying to find somebody to cut down the tree in my backyard. And I was very insistent about the level of insurance that they had, because there's a risk that the tree was not only going to hit my house, but my neighbor's house. And I searched a long time trying to find a tree trimming company that had the level of insurance that I personally wanted them to have. I did eventually find one. But it did take me several weeks and going back and forth to find somebody. I've also seen where I've had to hire an electrician outside of my county in order to find one that had a good safety record. So those are things to think of too. Sometimes having these requirements in place mean you're going to pay more up front for the work to get done. But that's what you're doing, is you're paying for the safe record. So that way, when they are on property and they are doing the work and one of their employees falls, that injury is not put on you. That $2, $3, $4 million injury is not put on your organization. Alrighty, my friends, I think I've gone on long enough. I know I had a few caveats there, But I hope that you find that helpful. But that is a contractor safety program. January is a great time to work on it. So if you just kind of make a plan every January to review your contractor safety program, it works out amazingly well. Alrighty, I will chat with you next week. It's already next year, right? I will chat with you next week. And in the meantime, stay safe out there, my friends. Bye-bye. You know what? I have a hunch that you have a BSF, a best safety friend, who would love to know about this show. Well, don't keep it to yourself. Sharing is caring. Stop what you're doing right now and forward this show to them. They will thank you. And don't forget, you can check out the show notes and links for this week's show at www.asksafetygeek.com. Chat with you next week. Bye.